Ladies and gentlemen, by the power vested in me, I hereby constitute this assembly as the legal congregation of the University of Pretoria. During this assembly, degrees and certificates with all the associated rights and privileges will be conferred and awarded on the candidates whose names appear in the program. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, we now request you to join us in silent prayer or meditation to give thanks for the achievements of our students. I thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as Vice Principal Academic of the University of Pretoria, I welcome you to this graduation ceremony this afternoon. I wish to extend a special word of welcome to the recipient of the Chancellor's Medal, Professor P.G.J. Meyring, the Vice Rector of the University of Stellenbosch, Professor Nico Koopman, the Dean of the Faculty of Theology, Professor Johan Buitendag, the Dean of the Faculty of Education, Professor Chika Sihule, the Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Education, Professor Salome Himan-Vogel, the Deputy Director of the Department of Enrollment and Student Administration, Dr. A.M. Mateka. Then too, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to chairpersons of schools, heads of departments, directors, emeriti and honorary professors and other lecturers and their spouses, supervisors, co-supervisors and external examiners of doctorandi, the representative of the Student Representative Council who will present the SRC Academic Honorary Colours, all persons to whom degrees will be conferred and certificates awarded this afternoon, to Chief Justice Zondo, all spouses, parents and other parties, as well as dignitaries whom we may not be aware of. Ladies and gentlemen, I now request the Dean of the Faculty of Theology to introduce to me the candidate for the presentation of the Chancellor's Medal.
Meneer die visierektor, ek het die eer om aan u voor te stel professor Pieter Gerard Jacobus Meyring vir die toekenning van die kanseliersmedalje. Throughout his working life and beyond, Professor Piet Meyring has committed himself to the work of reconciliation in South Africa and in many other countries. He contributed by this involvement in many worldwide ecumenical activities of the Church, and especially in the broader context of the South African community through his membership of the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He became involved in numerous reconciliation efforts in countries such as Rwanda, Indonesia, Fiji, Canada, and Sri Lanka, and as expert academic in countries such as Israel, Palestine, Ireland, Northern Ireland, England, Scotland, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Germany, India, the USA, Australia and New Zealand to speak and to advise on TRC matters. This in turn has brought distinction to the Church and to the University of Pretoria, both of which he continues to serve faithfully and diligently. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to present the Chancellor's Medal to the candidate.
I hereby present the Chancellor's Medal to Professor Pieter Gerard Jacobus Meyring. Ladies and gentlemen, you may applaud. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor now of requesting Professor Pieter Gerard Jacobus Meyring to address the Assembly. And may I invite you to give Professor Meyring another round of applause, particularly because today is his birthday.
Vice Rector, Professor Norman Duncan, Deans of the Faculties, especially Professor Johan Buitendag, and my colleagues from the University, from the Faculty of Theology, ladies, gentlemen, especially family, friends, and my Frau Linda, may I start by expressing my heartfelt gratitude for what is happening today. To receive the University of Pretoria's Chancellor's Medal is a singular honor. I'm deeply humbled by this wonderful gift bestowed upon me by the Chancellor and the Council of the University. I'm also deeply indebted to Professor Buitendag and my other colleagues at the Faculty of Theology who initiated the process of the award. When Professor Buitendag phoned me earlier this year to inform me of the medal, it took my breath away. Why me? Many of my colleagues, I'm sure, far better deserve the honor. And all of this happening in the centenary year of our faculty. But I do accept the award with profound gratitude, especially gratitude towards God, who sustained me, carried me through the years, who made all of this possible. Talking to my wife, I realized that I probably am here today because I was in the past fortunate enough to be sometimes at the right time, at the right place, able to witness some of the great events in our country. I was fortunate to walk in the company, often in the shadow of my heroes, of President Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, en Dominee Beyers Nudee, and Professors David Bosch and Johan Heyns, and Dr. Bergelia Bam, and Dr. Frank Chikane, and Professor Nico Koopman, and many others. I had little to do with what was happening, but it was nice to be there. You may remember the story of the mouse clinging to the back of a huge African elephant crossing a wooden bridge. The two of us are shaking the bridge, aren't we? The mouse exclaimed. Being connected to the University of Pretoria has been a great privilege and an exciting adventure. I've been at Tux for 30 years, first as student and then as lecturer, and the memories of being on campus, especially the company of my colleagues at the Faculty of Theology, as well as the students, will be with me as long as I live. Unexpected things happen to one at the university. Let me remind all of you sitting here today, students and staff, be forewarned. I was sitting in my office at the Faculty of Theology one January afternoon in 1996 when my telephone rang. Pete, are you sitting down? The famous voice asked. Archbishop Desmond told me that without my knowing, my name was put up to become a member of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. President Mandela has approved your appointment, he said. I was dumbfounded. Me, the TRC, will the process really succeed? Tutu must have heard my hesitation over the phone. Pete, he said, may I remind you, I am the Archbishop of Cape Town, and I speak for the Lord God. And God says you have to come, but you have 3 days to decide. I immediately rushed to the Dean's office, and he and I made our way to the office of the Rector, Professor Flip Smith. You need to answer Tutu's call, the two of them advised me. We will keep your position at the university, the Rector said. Go with the TRC. See it as our university's contribution to the process. So started my journey with the TRC, trying to make sense of the past and the present, as well as the future of our country, and introducing me to people and bringing me to some of the situation mentioned in Professor Buitendag's motivation for the medal. I'm eternally grateful for the university for making this possible. But speaking about the Faculty of Theology, this is our centenary year, and since the beginning of 2017, we've been celebrating. At the front entrance to the Theology building, Professor Buitendag had overseen the erection of an open gate. You may have seen it. The wooden gate, originally the main gate of the university itself, was positioned to invite all who pass by to enter the faculty. The centenary motto says it all, opening the gates to a new future. I was thinking about this the past weeks. Isn't it somewhat presumptuous to assume that the gates at the Faculty of Theology should open to the future? Do we as theologians have anything to say? Do we have a role in the community? Doesn't theology, especially religion, belong to the past, slowly withering away in a very secular society, or lodging itself quietly into the privacy of worshippers' hearts? That is what Karl Marx and Max Weber and Emil Durkheim and countless who had followed in their footsteps the past century have predicted. But instead, religion has emerged at the beginning of our century as an important player on the scene. There are some who rue this development. Religion is not obsolete. Unfortunately, it's dangerous. Look around you. This resurgence of religion seems to go hand in hand with a resurgence of religiously legitimized violence across the globe. The wise thing to do would be to weaken, to neutralize, or eliminate religion as a factor in public life. Miroslav Volf, one of the great thinkers of our time, contests the idea that Christianity is primarily responsible for violence. Actually, he says, the cure we need against religiously induced or legitimized violence is not for less religion, but in a carefully qualified way for more religion. Wolf says, I quote him, put differently, the more we reduce Christian faith to vague religiosity or conceive of it as the private affair of individuals, the worse off we will be. Inversely, the more we nurture Christian faith as an ongoing tradition that by its intrinsic content shapes behavior and in its regulative reach touches the public sphere, the better off we will be. Wolf's plea is for what he calls a thick conception and practice of the Christian faith that will have a positive role to play in the lives of peoples and communities that will contribute to the building of the future. This is what the eminent theologian Jürgen Moltmann pleaded for when he, at the reception of an honorary doctorate from the University of Pretoria here in this hall in April this year, outlined the theology of the future, a relevant theology of hope dedicated to face the real needs of our time with a life-enhancing message. But returning to the open gates at the entrance to the Faculty of Theology, where would we like to be taken to? How do we envisage the destination beyond the wooden gate? Allow me, friends, to reach back into our past, to the early church in the time of the New Testament for an answer. Allow me to quote the first great theologian in the history of Christianity, the Apostle Paul. In every single letter Paul wrote, he indicated the destination we need to travel to as the threefold destination of, you know it, faith and hope and love. Paul's call for us to walk in the way of faith is extremely apt. The Christian religion revolves around faith. It is through faith that we are saved. Our faith binds us to the triune God, gives meaning and direction to our lives, and provides us with a message to the world. Apart from being the centenary year of our faculty, we are celebrating the 500th year of the Reformation. In October this year, large numbers of church leaders, together with thousands of congregants, will converge upon Wittenberg in Germany to celebrate Martin Luther's 95 Theses nailed to a church door. This act, an act of faith, prompted the Reformation, which in turn profoundly changed the landscape of Europe and influenced the wider world for centuries to come. Luther and his colleagues' emphasis was on faith alone, but faith that could be understood and internalized. They presented the age-old message of the gospel in a new way, in the language and the context of their time. The Bible was translated into German for everyone to read. Christians were enabled to understand the content and the meaning of their faith. We need to take a page from Luther and his colleagues' book. We too need a relevant faith, a message that speaks to our people in our context, in our time. A real contribution from the Faculty of Theology to the development of a thick Christianity is to work towards a Theologia Africana, expressing the eternal message of Jesus Christ in the language of our people, in our situation, clothed in the culture of men and women in our land, and geared to the needs of South Africans wherever they find themselves. In doing this, the gate to the future will be wide open. But faith, however, is not only to do with preaching and talking and writing and theologizing. It has to be acted out. Our faith demands of us to take a stand, to, when necessary, speak truth to power like the prophets of old. During the struggle, the church leaders as well as congregants were prepared to witness to the truth and, if necessary, suffer ridicule and persecution. After the 1994 election, the prophetic voice of the churches have become rather quiet. But we need the churches, the leaders and the members to once again make their voices heard. South Africa is the poorer without it. The past 2 years, I have to say, the South African Council of Churches has once again taken up the prophet's mantle. One hopes that the rest of the Christian community will follow. At the Faculty of Theology, we did have prophets in the past who dared to say what was necessary to be said and to suffer the consequences. We are called to continue on this path, empowering and informing a generation of students on their way to the future. They and us need to remember that being a follower of Jesus does not only imply joyfully to confess to the world, Jesus is the Lord, but to stand with our Lord, siding where he is with the oppressed. Desmond Tutu put it succinctly, I quote, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has his foot on the tail of the mouse, and you say that you are neutral, then now the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality." The second destination beyond the open gate is love. In Jesus' book, it would have been destination number 1. God is the God of love, and he calls us to partake in his love. Love for him, for one another, and love for the world, for the cosmos. On the eve of his death, Jesus told his disciples, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you. By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." Thick theology, as I see it, would be to reflect on God's love, on the way that God's love is reflected in and emulated by the church, a love that transcends all barriers and binds God's children into one family. At our university, we are in a unique position, being an inclusive faculty, housing students and lecturers from a number of churches. We can learn from one another, debate our different traditions, even defend our varying views, but still remain one in Christ, bound by the strands of love and respect. Having discovered our green pasture of peace and love, we have a message and an address to invite people to. Are we able to train our students in the ministry of love, something the country sorely needs? That goes for the Faculty of Theology, that goes for the Faculty of Education. To mention one example, I've referred to the South African TRC. The Commission has done its best, but we are still far from the dream of a rainbow country. Reconciliation, we need to realize, is not a once-off event, it is a process. As South Africans, 20 years after the first democratic election, we still have a long, long way to go. We still live in a deeply divided country where many of the hopes of a new South Africa have been dashed. Poverty and inequality, hunger and illness, violence in the streets and at home, racism and xenophobia, corruption, the anger of the youth in the streets, and the despair of millions without work is our daily fare. The ghosts of our apartheid past have not been laid to rest. They continue to haunt us. We need healing and reconciliation. All of us need to put love into practice. We do not enter the gate to the future innocently, empty-handed. The challenges of the past, the present accompany us. But what an opportunity for all of us, parents, teachers, students from all the different faculties. South Africa, Beyers Naudé said, is a microcosm of the contemporary world. Here, black and white, east and west, rich and poor, meet as in no other country in the world. This sets a tremendous challenge, but also a unique privilege and incomparable opportunity to witness to justice, love of neighbor, truth, and compassion. Which, friends, brings me to the final destination. It was truth, it was faith, it was love. The final destination is hope. At the end of his autobiography, Beyers Naudé wrote about the future of South Africa. Much in the book was devoted to a description of the past, the difficult times he, as well as his fellow South Africans, had to go through. Umbay, men better than many, was able to tell the story. He was there in the midst of the struggle. He also mentioned the vexing problems we are still facing in South Africa. He understood the anger and the disappointment of many. But the 80-year-old Dominee refused to despair. He wrote his final chapter with a smile. I have faith in God, he says. I have faith in my fellow South Africans. I have hope. In the Faculty of Theology in years to come, if the faculty in years to come will help South Africans to rekindle their hope with a firm conviction that our final destiny is not in the hands of men, but in the hands of God, that He is on the throne, and the final decision is His, not that of the rulers of the world, then the faculty will serve us well. May the theology emanating from the faculty be, and again, in the words of Jürgen Moltmann, a theology of hope, hope for the future, hope for one another, hope for the church, hope for society, and as important, hope for our suffering planet. In so many more words, a thick theology. But, colleagues, this is not only the Faculty of Theology's responsibility. The motto of the University of Pretoria also refers to the early theologian, the Apostle Paul. Ad destinatum persicor, on our badge. With zeal and perseverance I strive towards the goal. Is taken from his letter to the Philippians. And that is just another way of saying, we go through the gates of future. We open the gates to the future. My hope and my prayer is that every faculty of the university will identify with its motto. With the opening of the gates, may all of us join hands and make our way through the gate to the threefold destiny of faith and love and hope. What a message to the rest of the world that would be. Professor Duncan and Professor Buitendag, I thank you. Thank you for the role the university has played in my life, for allowing me to adventure. And once again, thank you very much for the medal. Not really deserved, but highly appreciated by the mouse on the elephant's back. I thank you.
Thank you, Professor Meyrung. Ladies and gentlemen, as I had indicated Professor Meyrung earlier, it is we who are honored, Professor, to award you the medal. Thank you for that generous and inspiring message. Now, ladies and gentlemen, today's graduation is one of 8 ceremonies in the spring graduation period, where a total of 1,807 qualifications will be conferred. Today, we are conferring 396 qualifications in the faculties of Theology and Education, including 19 doctoral degrees, 36 master's degrees, 322 honors degrees, 17 undergraduate degrees, 1 postgraduate certificate in higher education, and 1 advanced certificate in education. I now request the Dean of the Faculty of Theology and supervisors to introduce to me the candidates present whose names appear in the program in the order in which they appear in the program.
Mr. Vice Principal, the supervisors will now introduce the doctoral candidates to you.
Meneer die visierektor, ek stel graag aan u voor Tenis Christian Ackerman, wat voldoen het aan al die vereistes vir die graad PhD in praktische theologie, met 'n proefskrif getitel 'n narratiewe alternatief op die konsep van afhanklikheidsidentiteit, 'n pastorale perspektief. En dit is voorberei onder my promotorskap. In sy proefskrif het die promovendus navorsing gedoen oor hoe 'n persoon sy of haar identiteit as iemand wat van dwelms afhanklik is of was, verstaan. Navorsing is gedoen vanuit 'n narratiewe verstaan van identiteit en afhanklikheid. Die animasiefilm How to Train Your Dragon is as vertrekpunt en metafoor gebruik. Aspekte wat onder andere aangespreek word is die algemene stelling, een keer 'n verslaafde, altyd 'n verslaafde. Die promovendus bevraagteken die gevolg wat hierdie stelling op 'n persoon se lewe mag hê. Verder is daar ondersoek ingestel oor 'n persoon wat afhanklik is of was aan dwelms, se verstaan van sonde en sy of haar godsbegrip. In samewerking met die mede-navorsers is heelwat diskoerse hieroor geïdentifiseer. Meneer die visierektor, ek vra u om die graad aan die kandidaat toe te ken.
Hiermee ken ek die graad filosofie dokter toe aan die kandidaat met al die regte en voorregte daaraan verbonde.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Olusula Solomon Akanbi, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis entitled The Socio-Economic and Political Impact of Southwest Pentecostal Churches Viewed from a Theological Perspective, prepared under my supervision. In his doctoral thesis, the promovendus investigated the Nigerian Pentecostal movement's involvement in the social, political, and economic transformation of the people of southwestern Nigeria and assessed the positive and negative impact of the movement, offering a critique of the Pentecostal movement using the Redeemed Christian Church of God, the Deeper Life Bible Church, and Living Faith Church as case studies. He answered the questions of how, why, and what are the Pentecostal impact on the people of southwest Nigeria. He concluded that despite some shortcomings of the Pentecostal movement in terms of teaching and action, their contribution to national development socially, economically, and politically is significant. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you David Wesley Hirschman, who has complied with the requirements for the degree PhD with a thesis titled Missional Focus, Form and Function are Redefining American Christianity, prepared under my supervision. In his doctoral thesis, the candidate contrasted the historical development of American Christianity with current activities of emerging churches. He employed missional elements in the worldwide framework of a missional discussion begun by New Begin, Bosch, and others, to determine that American Christianity is being redefined through the emphasis of a Mishu Day and an incarnational approach to ministry, where contextual focus informs, and provides for effective ministry function. This research makes a unique contribution to the field of missiology through a phenomenological study in missional and missiological concepts employed by emerging churches in the United States to provide fresh insights into how American Christianity is being redefined. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree, Doctor of Philosophy, with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you the following candidate, Karabo Makufane, who has complied with the requirements for the degree PhD with a thesis titled Unity at Crossroads, a Southern African missiological case study, prepared under the supervision of Professor Graham Duncan, with myself as co-supervisor. In his doctoral thesis, the promovendus analyzed unity within the Uniting Presbyterian Church in Southern Africa during the period 1999 to 2009 and assessed how far the denomination has progressed with organic union since the union of the Presbyterian Church of Southern Africa and the Reformed Presbyterian Church of Southern Africa in 1999. He found that the union was based on inadequate preparation, and as a result, many unresolved problems have emerged to test the witness of a denomination and to hamper the consolidation of a union. Therefore, despite 10 years of organic union, authentic unity is elusive. He identified some of the key challenges inherent in existing structural unity in the UPCSA and their implications for tangible unity. He makes a significant contribution to the discourse on unity in the field of missiology within the UPCSA. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree, Doctor of Philosophy, with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Meneer die visierektor, ek stel graag aan u voor Ben Petrus Maree, wat voldoen het aan al die vereistes van die graad filosofie dokter, met 'n proefskrif getiteld Jesus en die buitestanders in Johannes 4, voorberei onder my promotorskap met mede-promotor Professor Kobus Kok, nou van EFT Leven in België. In sy proefskrif ondersoek Maree aan die hand van sosiale identiteitsteorie die wyse waarop Jesus die Samaritaanse vrou as deel van die buitegroep deel maak van die binnegroep van Jesus en sy navolgers. Spesifieke aandag word gegee aan Jesus se nie-konvensionele houding en optrede teenoor buitestanders binne die streng hiërargiese reinheidskultuur van sy tyd. Die resultate van die ondersoek bied nuwe moontlikhede aan die kerk wat betref die kerk se missionêre gerigtheid in die huidige tydsgewrig. Meneer die visierektor, ek versoek u om die graad aan die kandidaat toe te ken.
Hiermee ken ek die graad Filosofie Dokter toe aan die kandidaat met al die regte en voorregte daaraan verbonde.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Jung Sik Moon, who has complied with all the requirements for the degree PhD in Practical Theology with a thesis titled A Narrative Approach to pastoral care for the elderly faced with the option of suicide in South Korea. It was prepared under my supervision. In his doctoral thesis, the candidate analyzed elderly suicide within the context of pastoral counseling in the current Korean society, from the perspective of post-foundationalist practical theology, using a narrative method as a methodological approach. In his unique approach, he combined insights from the Korean novels and in-depth interviews with 4 co-researchers who directly or indirectly experienced elderly suicide. The research provides insights on how the dominant discourse of South Korean society constructs the lives of elderly co-researchers. The study reveals that elderly people are able to re-author their own lives, as opposed to the common belief that they are obstinate and unable to change. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree, Doctor of Philosophy, with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce you to David Mushiavanu, who has complied with the requirements for the degree of PhD with a thesis, a historical analysis of the Presbyterian Church of Southern Africa, Africa's social, political, and economic influence on Zimbabwe, 1890 to 1990, prepared under my supervision. In his doctoral thesis, the candidate has showed that the Presbyterian Church of Southern Africa imparted Reformed teachings and influence in the Zimbabwean context. This thesis offers a historical analysis and focus on Reformed theological principles and its impact on Zimbabwe. The study traced some of the socio-political and economical experiences of Zimbabwe from 1890 to 1990 and critically evaluated the PCSA's contribution to these, guided by its Reformed beliefs and perspectives. The research, as part of its methodology, gave particular attention to the interpretation from a third world and African perspective, and in this regard was significantly informed by the use of oral tradition. The research offers very important ideas as to how Reformed beliefs and teachings can be applied not only to Zimbabwe, but to the African context as a whole. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree, Doctor of Philosophy, with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Vice Principal, I introduce to you Derek Leonard Openshaw, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Conflict Resolution and Reconciliation Within Congregations and prepared under my supervision. In his thesis, the promovendus explores whether conflict is led and managed to achieve both the resolving of issues and the realization of reconciliation. A hermeneutical approach was used as the main methodology to explore how congregations experience, perceive, and respond to conflict, together with felt and observed outcomes through a quantitative survey. He concludes that there is an education vacuum in both sociological and theological related aspects of conflict, which inhibits both the resolving of issues and the realization of reconciliation. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree, Doctor of Philosophy, with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Sangpil Son, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor in Philosophy, with a thesis titled James Noble Mackenzie's Ministry in South Korea, a missiological exploration from a Minjung perspective, prepared under my supervision. In his doctoral thesis, the candidate focused on the missionary work of James Noble Mackenzie, an Australian missionary in Korea. His work amongst marginalized people such as lepers, orphans, and in establishing schools for marginalized children, as well as the impact of his work on his own family, have been investigated. The relationship between his missionary work and the Japanese occupiers of Korea received focused attention, especially in comparison to Minjung theology, a Korean contextual theology of the middle of the 20th century. He also assessed the significance of Mackenzie's standing as an evangelist in view of his attitude towards Shinto worship. This research makes a unique contribution in the field of missiology, attending to the life and work of a representative of the Australian Presbyterian mission tradition. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree, Doctor of Philosophy, with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the Masters of Arts in Theology, with specialization in pastoral family therapy. Robert Mabasa. Master of Philosophy in Applied Theology, Adam Shongwe. Master of Theology with specialization in dogmatics and Christian ethics, Kotleo Mokwena with distinction. Master of Theology with specialization in practical theology, Elvis Mofokeng. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidate has complied with all the requirements for a degree Bachelor of Theology Honours with specialization in theological studies, Michael Mohla Monyane.
I now request the Dean of Education and Supervisors to introduce to me the candidates present whose names appear in the program in the order in which they appear in the program.
Mr. Vice Principal, the supervisors will now introduce the doctoral candidates.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Vunani Baloy, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Influence of Guided Inquiry-Based Laboratory Activities on Outcomes Achieved in First-Year Physics. It was prepared under the supervision of Professor Walter Meyer and with the co-supervision of Professor Estelle Geiger. In his thesis, the promovendus investigated the effect of explicit reflective guided inquiry, also known as ERGI, laboratory practical activities, on first-year physics students' understanding of the nature of science and academic performance. In a controlled quasi-experiment, students in the control group did recipe-based practical activities, and the experimental group did ERGI laboratory practical activities. Both groups had to answer the same explicit reflective questions on an aspect of the nature of science at the end of each practical session. After the practical course, the experimental group showed a better understanding than the control group in each of the 7 aspects of the nature of science. The largest differences were observed in the tentative nature of science, the distinction between theory and law, and the role of imagination and creativity. No significant gender or aptitude effect was observed. It was found that, despite initial resistance, the experimental group developed a positive attitude towards the guided inquiry practical activities, while the control group was happy with recipe-based approach, followed in their practical activities. The experimental group did not perform any better than the control group in the practical and theoretical year-end examinations. Therefore, this study demonstrated that ERGI laboratory practical activities enhanced first-year physics students' understanding of the nature of science, but not their academic performance. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree, Doctor of Philosophy, with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Linda Bosman, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Implementability of Inquiry-Based Scientific Education in the Foundation Phase Classroom, prepared under my supervision with Professor Albine Corden of the University of Lille, North de France, as co-supervisor. In her thesis, Linda utilized a multiple case study design to elicit the voices of young children as scientists engaged in scientific inquiry and 3 student teachers who facilitated science education following the Lamar approach in grade 1 to 3 classrooms. Her conceptual framework integrated contemporary perspectives on childhood, theory, constructivist theory concepts, and IBSE. Linda found that the children engaged in IBSE as natural scientists, displaying the cognitive capacity to think, act, and learn like real scientists in the classroom context. Engaging in science within a community of scientists and being actively engaged in knowledge construction shaped the children's sense of agency and identity as young scientists. She similarly found that implementing IBSE contributed to shaping student teachers' professional identity as science teachers for young children. Based on the results, Linda designed a framework proposing guidelines on multiple levels for IBSE implementation in the South African Foundation Phase Classroom. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Elizabeth Keku Kumalo, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Working Against and Working Towards Narratives of South African Women Principles, prepared under my supervision and with Prof. Venita Pillay as co-supervisor. In her thesis, the promovenda used a combination of ethnography as well as a narrative inquiry, relying on capability approach to understand the experiences of South African women principals in secondary schools when leading and managing schools. She used interpretism as a methodological paradigm. She worked from an interpretive stance and collected, analyzed, and reported on qualitative data to gain insight into the women principals' experiences surrounding their experiences in schools. Based on the results, the promovenda argues that capability approach aims to enhance the development opportunities of those who have been marginalized. Its gaze and application is largely on the professional aspects of our lives. The promovenda found that women capabilities and abilities to assert agency is mediated by the complexity of their multiple roles as professionals, for example, as leaders, mothers, and wives. Capability approach needs to wholly consider the complexities of being a woman leader, a wife, and a mother in order to enhance women's abilities to use capabilities and resources to achieve much valued functionings. Regardless of the Department of Education's ongoing strategies and initiatives to transform the education system and to achieve gender equity in the education system, the teaching profession is still characterized by unequal treatment of educators. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Corneille Jean Meyring, who has complied with the requirements for the degree, Doctor of Philosophy, with a thesis titled The Relation Between Academic Commitment, Self-Determination and Academic Achievement in Grade 11 and 12 Learners, prepared under my supervision and with Dr. Christopher Nemec as co-supervisor. In her thesis, the promovenda used path analysis to specify and test two hypothesized models. In the first model, she tested the validity of a self-determination theory model for a South African context. In her second model, she examined whether meaning could predict unique variance in academic achievement in addition to autonomous self-regulation. The final model suggested that need support and meaningful commitment predicted unique variance in autonomous motivation and perceived competence, which in turn predicted academic achievement. The findings of her study contribute to knowledge of self-determination theory as a motivational model in a South African sample and highlights two key contributions to our understanding of academic achievement. First, it's important for teachers to pay attention to the psychological needs of their learners and to create a learning environment in which these needs are satisfied. Second, meaning appears to be an important basic psychological need, in addition to autonomy, competence, and relatedness in autonomous motivation. The findings of the study have important practical implications for teacher education, classroom practice, and school policy. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Faith Bushishue Malotsa Mngumezulu, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Utilization of Constructivist Discourse to Enhance English as a Second Language Proficiency in Teacher Education, prepared under my supervision and with Professor Johannes Slabbert as co-supervisor. In her thesis, the Promovendus provides an in-depth exploration and explanation of how constructivist discourse is utilized to enhance English second language proficiency in teacher education in Swaziland. Her study contributes to knowledge on acquiring an academic language through a second language, as she debates the theoretical landscape of context-embedded academic language, supported by constructivist learning settings. Data collected for the qualitative case study were lesson observations of a class of 150 first-year student teachers and 4 of their teacher educators. Participants, 4 teacher educators and 4 student teachers, attended to open-ended survey questionnaires, semi-structured interviews, and reflective journals. Data were analyzed through a discourse analysis methodology to determine the educators' education practices and student teachers' meta-learning actions. Findings indicated that teacher educators utilize student teachers' real-life experiences, but only partially immerse them in problem-solving of language tasks to foster meta-learning actions and attain disciplinary discourses. Most of them did not regard ESL development as integrated in the teaching of content. Consequently, in their instruction, they preferred simplified ESL input, code switched, and promoted code switching in the student-teachers cooperative learning groups. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Geachte visierektor, ek stel Melanie Moon aan u voor, wat voldoen het aan al die vereistes vir die graad Filosofie dokter met 'n proefskrif getiteld, 'n ondersoek na die etiologiese faktore van kinders wat 'n familielid vermoor. Voorberei onder my promotorskap en professor Christian Besuidnout as mede-promotor. In her thesis, the Promovenda explored the etiological factors implicated in the phenomenon of children who commit family murder. The study was approached from a phenomenological perspective and conceptually drew from international theories relating to families, children, and crime. Qualitative data was generated from 9 case studies to gain an in-depth understanding of the causal factors behind these murders. The major findings of the study indicated complex etiological precursory circumstances in all the case studies, problematic attachment to the primary caregiver, and family dysfunction that often included abuse and extreme parental styles emerged as major themes. In several cases, the death of a significant loved one prior to the murders seemed to have been dealt with inadequately. In some but not all the cases, drug abuse and personality disorders have been indicated. The accumulated stresses were present over an extended period and seem to have led to feelings of rejection, anxiety, aggression, and a desire to escape intolerable circumstances in these children. Insights gained from this study will inform future preventative programs. Geachte visierektor, ek versoek u om die graad aan die kandidaat toe te ken.
Hiermee ken ek die graad filosofie dokter toe aan die kandidaat met al die regte en voorregte daaraan verbonde.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Harold Vikama Murange, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor in Philosophy with his thesis titled Managing Student Transition from Conventional to Open Schooling, a case study of Namibia, prepared under my supervision and with Dr. Samuel Adiemo as co-supervisor. In his thesis, the promovendus focused on exploring and explaining the experiences and perceptions of students during their transition from traditional classroom environment to open and distant learning, ODL, at Namibian College of Open Learning, NEMCOL. His study was driven by the assumption that change in the learning environment might be the most influential factor on learners' ability to integrate into distance learning mode. The research design was a case study that adopted a multi-method approach. Questionnaires, individual face-to-face interviews, focus group discussions, and documentation analysis were used to generate data. The participants were senior secondary students who transferred from the formal schools to NEMCOL to upgrade their grades. The other participants included area coordinators, tutors, and heads of tutorial centers. This study identified a gap between students and ODL expectations and demands. The students' academic, social, and psychological needs were found to be important for successful student integration from academic progression. As a contribution to the body of knowledge and practice, this study presents a hybrid model on transition from a conventional system to open schooling. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree, Doctor of Philosophy, with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, I introduce to you Mate Matipinar, who has complied with the requirements for the degree Doctor of Philosophy with a thesis titled Enhancing the Sense of Self of Peer Supporters Using Life Design Counseling, prepared under my supervision. In her thesis, the promovenda used narrative life design intervention techniques to explore the effect of group-based self-construction and narrative life design counseling on the sense of self of female adolescent peer supporters. She used a parallel interactive mixed methods design embedded in a constructivist paradigm, working from an interpretive stance and collected, analyzed and reporting on qualitative and quantitative data to gain insight into participants' experiences surrounding narrative group life design techniques, but also their possible impact on enhancing the sense of self. She purposefully sampled peer supporters in a conveniently sampled private school and found that the intervention program enhanced the sense of self of the participating peer supporters. Based on the results of the promovenda, the promovenda suggested that as this program can be easily replicated and duplicated, group-based life design intervention programs could be used in different settings to assist individuals effectively in not only enhancing their sense of self and thereby impacting positively on their well-being, but also and most importantly, enhancing their sense of meaning and purpose in life. Mr. Vice Principal, I request you to confer the degree on the candidate.
I hereby confer the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all its associated rights and privileges on the candidate.
Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Master of Education. Deslin Jacobs. Sipiwe Langa. With distinction, Francina Masola. With distinction, Ernest Masibe. Danica Udendal. June Peterson. Petronella Saul. With distinction, Ondine Schubert. Cindy Sutton. With distinction, Melanie Azel. Master of Education in Learning Support, Guidance and Counseling, Megan De Bruyn. With distinction, Brownen Ellis. Matabe Mudiba. With distinction, Linda Ninaba. In Education Management, Law and Policy, Gonasagari Naidu. In Education Leadership, Martha Bester. Puti Komo. Murama Kwale Makubu. Ben Masha. James Mklongo. Daniel Rasabota. Franz Fender. In Education Psychology, Alicia Adams. Keshia Kutzer. Mariana DeForce. Michelle Island. Leslie King. Cornelie Westhuizen. Willem Peterson. Siago Siobi. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the degree Bachelor of Education Honors in Learning Support, Leah Lebelo. Andre Swanepoel. Magdalene Clow. In Education Management, Law and Policy, Pius Adabla. Matlodi Apane. Shamiela Bahadu. Nyaniso Bantwini. Precious Bembe. Eileen Besedenode. Mukhatane Bopape. Meldi Bukosini. Elvis Bulunga. Leslie Chaba. Gilbert Chikwira. Alfred Chilwane. Reina Chilwane. Siketo Chuma. Verna Deso. Desmond Ladler. Sibongile Dlamini. Vusi Dlamini. Mtobisi Dladla. Veronica Dlamini. Audrey Dlamini Mutau. Raisecha Fufurani. Lulamile Gabela. Amanda Gerike. Nombulelo Kogela. David Govender. Mapula Gumbi. Mlungiselile Gungwa. Joseph Tlaisi. Matsweni Tlaku. Myra Tlachwayo. Hope Songwani. Makosha Kikana. Tekwani Kapula. Josephine Khaswe. Tsepo Khatle. Mashikwane Khokong. Hilda Khanyi. Minentle Khanyi. Michael Khoza. Ndumise Khosa. Busisiwe Khumalo. Mapitsi Kobe. Mama Kwe Kungwani. Mabel Kwakwa. With distinction, Dion Labuskakhni. Magdalene Laka. Betty Langa. Pilisiwa Langa. Sokolo Lebeko. Nyameka Lichela. Morongwa Lekhwabe. Shalene Lekhobia. Tembisile Lekere. Maria Lekwa. Tandi Letlape. Mielani Mabasa. Alita Mabena. Ndudusi Mabila. Rumisa Mabunda. Vukosi Mabunda. Tamsamna Madikwa. Abigail Madonsela. Nombumelelo Madonsela. Pumzile Madonsela. Matume Mafahla. Winnie Mafura. Tebogo Magabe. Bonolo Mahlohela. Kuli Maila. Makoshe Maila. Monare Maile. Nolwazi Majola. Precious Makamule. Ezekiel Makutla. Charlotte Makoni. Tlas Makopo. Petros Makopo. Bua Makuhani. Thomas Malau. Nora Malumani. Matlaba Malupe. Maureen Malupe. Tebogo Malupe. Gift Maluleke. Noel Maluleke. Thokozile Mangani. Togo Manganyela. Dumisani Mangena. Flora Mangena. Masilo Mangena. Tembisile Manzini. Mahlode Mapasha. Busisiwe Marule. Joyce Marumulwa. Machweni Maseve. Selaelo Masedi. Nomi Maseko. Mushidi Masilela. Babulaleni Masemula. Dikeledi Mashaba. Rewashla Mashaba. Solomon Mashala. Deliwe Mashego. Matapa Mashego. Kidibone Mashishi. Nombizelwa Masimula. Mokadi Masipa. Goodness Masondo. Zulile Masuku. Muzamani Maswanganye. Ntombi Mati. Mbongeni Matembula. William Matumba. Eric Mati. Yuthin Mati. Masindi Matsebatlela. Ngwale Maunatlala. Nozizwe Mbane. Hlati Mbele. John Mbonani. Mbuyiswa Mbongo. Phyllis Mdluli. Shongi Mdlalos. With distinction, Jonathan Maget. Nkele Milelo. Johan Meyer. Maria Mkatra. Wendy Mkize. Nkebasi Mkonza. Mandla Mguni. Mavis Mwabelo. Makhasu Mwatsi. Elizabeth Mudingwana. Tabitha Disakeng. Mutlabi Muela. Makhetwa Mukhadima. Xoliswa Muhale. Paulina Muhapi. Nkoli Muhare. Florence Muhorwe. Tileanang Mkhwajana. Nyakalo Mukhampanyani. Boitumelo Mokwatle. Mahlasela Mokoena. Pota Mokoena. Zodwa Mulane. Ditaba Molepo. Makoma Mulomo. Sophie Mulopo. Makansi Muloro. Gertrude Munaiwa. Lydia Munama. Munya Morapedi. Brenda Mushikaro. Paki Mushweshwe. Pini Mutau. Mabuchi Mutiba. Mita Mutsatsi. Priscilla Mutseare. Mpilong Mutsepe. Sibongile Mutsweni. Emily Mutswatswe. Nchadi Msimango. Bridget Msutu. Victoria Mtembu. Samson Mtetwa. Nomvoyo Mtimkulu. Madikeledi Mtimunya. Ana Mtombeni. Salfa Mchisa. Petros Mtsweni. Linda Mtsweni. Sylvia Mtsweni. Theorine Mtsweni. Kubus Mcholo. Khomuso Musi. Nonhlanhla Msilankatha. Nozuko Mzozo. Morongwa Nakeng. Rosina Ndala. Vusimus Ndlovu. Caroline Ndlovu, Zameka Ndumiso, Kanyisile Nene, Matimu Ngobeni, Gertrude Ngwenya, Lindiwe Ngwenya, Wendy Ngwenya, Ngamisile Ngongo, Masichaba Nkisi, Johannes Nkwana, Mohlaki Nkokhatse, Mampoetsi Nkosi, Rika Nkosi, Nondumiso Nomlomo, Sibongile Nonoisi, Cindy Ntila, Gloria Nzibande, Ntombufuthi Ntsila, Miriam Ntsimane, Winnie Nyalungu, with distinction, Celeste Westhuizen, Mule Padi, Mama Papo, Christina Pebani, Ntombe Sininge Phakati, Toromechane Phala, Nonhlanhla Phenyane, Khabalo Phokanuka, Muswanae Phulwana, Moeletsi Pinkwane, Tivulawi Ramakuela, Joma Ramatibe, Kaugelo Ramokolo, Puseletso Ramolla, Trifina Rantau, Zanele Petunia Sambo, Mavis Sangweni, Lifihlile Sebutoma. Miranda Sebutoma. Nyaneng Silamulela. Mpho Silinda. Johannes Seminya. Ashley Sepeng. Hlabisi Serage. Ana Setsogwe. Slugadi Shabangu. Damarias Chai. Florence Chibambo. December Shongwe. Samuel Shubani. Mamiki Sibeko. Nompumelelo Sibeko. Eunice Sibia. Simon Sibia. Simpiwe Sibia. Temba Siganagana. Emma Sila. Tobile Slombo. Tobile Smilane. Shadrach Sitole. Thokozile Siyangapi. Linus Kosana. Muiponi Kosana. Nokutula Kosana. With distinction, Martha Smith. Tembisa Sibudula. Mutsidisi Swarahle. Sizani Taedi. Ngadu Tau. Elizabeth Tache. Ntebaleng Tina. Gladys Tupola. Zakelo Tungo. Cynthia Tladi. Tubage Tladi. Rosina Tlala. Baby Tolo. Murava Tovakale. Mutlalepule Tsawani. Jacob Tsele. Justina Chabangu. Mamusipilo Tsehla. Mamurufe Tsikani. Daniel Chwakong. Muikabi Tsweu. Craig Tyler. Elsif Petros van Niekerk. René van Zyl. Eddie Vilakazi. Martha Vilakazi. Lucy Vilankulu. Daphne Fisser. Marius Volkanshaw. Mushekwa Kaba. Nziwa Madoda Yaya. Masabata Yika. Deliwe Zabeko. Sitembile Zondo. Pumelele Mdleze. Ndobokolo Mashiga. In science and mathematics education, Nomtlekabo Mabena. Pilani Mhlongo. In teacher education and professional development, Kiulebugile Marumo. In intermediate phase, Andre Crick. Yen-Marie Willemse. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have fulfilled the requirements of the degree Bachelor of Education in Further Education and Training, Natural Sciences. Charles Mbanja. Gladwin Murudi. In early childhood development and foundation phase, Tatum Abrahams. Winetha Belengan. Jessica Brandt. With distinction, Aldine D. Angelique Lewis. With distinction, Raquel Mota. Storm Pelser. Jandria Smith. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the postgraduate certificate in higher education. Sabatine Carvalho. Mr. Vice Principal, the following candidates have complied with all the requirements for the Advanced Certificate in Education Management. Mamolefe Rapudi.
Ladies and gentlemen, all of us here present will agree that this ceremony represents the culmination of much hard work and sacrifice on the part of those who have graduated and received the certificates. So my sincerest congratulations to everyone who were awarded degrees and certificates today. Congratulations for having stayed the course. Congratulations for having reached the goal of successfully completing the programs for which you had enrolled. And of course, congratulations to your parents, guardians, partners, sponsors, and others who had supported you materially and in other important ways during the period of your studies. Finally, congratulations and sincere thanks to those who had lectured and supervised the students who had received degrees today. Ladies and gentlemen, I now wish to invite you and the entire audience to give you a warm round of applause on the successful completion of your studies. And finally, I want to address the graduates and those who had received certificates. Without the support of your loved ones, your partners, sponsors, I'm sure the journey towards this point would have been so much more difficult. And so I invite you to give a warm round of applause to your parents, sponsors, and other supporters. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of the proceedings. Before we close, I wish to invite all present for refreshments afterwards in the marquees situated in front of the Rembrandt Hall. You are requested to stand for the singing of the national anthem and to remain standing until the assembly has been dissolved and the academic procession has left the auditorium. The words of the national anthem are printed on the inside back cover of the program. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise.
Oh
Ladies and gentlemen, by the powers vested in me, I hereby dissolve this Assembly of the University of Pretoria.